This document requires Level 5 clearance to access. If you lack sufficient clearance, please close your terminal immediately. Item number, SCP-6450. Level 5 Top Secret. Containment Class, Apollyon. Disruption Class, Existential. Special Containment Procedures. Full containment of SCP-6450 is considered futile as its existence imposes an inevitable XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. Containment efforts thus focus on the implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah, which postpones the occurrence of SCP-6450 when properly executed. However, Procedure 6450 Utah requires access to resources that are considered finite. Research concerning further production of these assets, along with a potential mechanism by which they could be supplied in perpetuity, is ongoing. O5 Command has preemptively approved cross-testing involving other contained anomalies should such anomalies prove useful in supplying Procedure 6450 Utah. A full list of anomalies used in testing involving SCP-6450 is provided in Supplementary Document 6450 Zulu Level 5 Clearance Required. Per Order 6450-01-225-9, the Foundation is engaged in ongoing collaborative efforts with several groups of interest, including the Global Occult Coalition, in order to ensure minimal interference from major world governments during implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. All staff assigned to SCP-6450 are stationed at Secure Operating Facility 6450-01, located at an undisclosed area within Antarctica. SOF 6450-01 houses approximately 300 D-Class personnel to be used exclusively for the implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. All D-Class personnel must be females of childbearing age. When the D-Class population of SOF 6450-01 falls below 50%, D-Class personnel must be transferred to the facility until full capacity is attained. D-Class personnel stationed at SOF 6450-01 are to be treated with higher levels of lenience, as premature termination must be avoided if possible. Security personnel found to be engaging in the unnecessary termination of D-Class personnel will face severe disciplinary action, up to and including demotion to D-Class. If the Foundation is unable to supply SOF 6450-01 with additional D-Class personnel for any reason, site staff must be utilized in lieu of D-Class personnel for Procedure 6450 Utah. In such cases, staff will be selected for this assignment based on security clearance, with lower-level personnel being utilized first. SCP-6450 is currently held in a Level 5 Maximum Security Zero Black Containment Chamber in the Subterranean Containment Wing of SOF 6450-01. A series of mechanical tubes and machinery are fixed to the exterior of the cell for the purpose of transporting fluids produced during Procedure 6450 Utah. Maintenance teams must be deployed on a weekly basis to ensure such machinery is operating within acceptable parameters. Repairs, if deemed necessary, must be initiated immediately. Repair failure or postponement is cause for a full lockdown, with further containment actions being handled directly by O5 Command. Repair teams must provide Site Command with status reports every 90 seconds. Any deviation from this order should be responded to in a manner identical to a repair failure. All personnel at SOF 6450-01 are expressly forbidden from self-termination regardless of the circumstances. SCP-6450 is currently in a dormant state, with behaviors that are deemed acceptable and should not be treated as cause for alarm. Deviation from these behaviors, no matter how slight, must be reported to O5 Command immediately. While aberrant behavior does not necessarily entail a containment breach, site security is to immediately be placed on alert and MTF-6450 Alpha is to be deployed as a precautionary measure, see below. Any dialogue with SCP-6450 must be exclusively conducted by a member of O5 Command or an authorized operative assigned to MTF-6450 Alpha. Unauthorized interaction with SCP-6450 is cause for immediate termination. By direct order of O5 Command, Mobile Task Force 6450 Alpha, the end of the beginning, has been created and is authorized for deployment during the implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. MTF 6450 Alpha possesses the following directives. 1. Ensure proper implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. Any personnel found to be hindering or otherwise poorly implementing Procedure 6450 Utah are designated for termination. MTF 6450 Alpha possesses authorization to make such determinations at their own discretion. 2. Ensure operational security. Staff are to be questioned regularly to detect possible affiliation with a group of interest or agendas that run contrary to that of the Foundation. Again, such personnel are to be terminated immediately. 3. Ensure treatment of D-Class personnel within SOF 6450-01 is in line with the aforementioned special containment procedures. 4. Directive expunged by order of O5 Command, in the event personnel redacted, MTF 6450 Alpha must begin howling dawn. 5. Ensure O5 Command is briefed by the SOF 6450-01 Site Director on a weekly basis. Begin Cognitohazard Inoculation. SCP-6450 exhibits an active and extremely potent cognitohazardous effect. This effect extends to all documentation and informational files pertaining to SCP-6450. Embedded within this document is a Class 1 anti-cognitohazard inoculation device. You have been exposed to this device by accessing this file. While you should be protected from the effects of the cognitohazard, some side effects should be anticipated, including headaches, feverish symptoms, mild paranoia, and sudden bouts of coughing. This anti-cognitohazard device only remains in effect so long as the following conditions are satisfied. 1. Your eyes remain on the screen at all times. 2. You continue to read the file for SCP-6450 with no deviation from the text on the page. 3. You remain committed to the goals of the SCP Foundation. 4. You remain hopeful for the future of humanity. 5. You remain willing to forgive mistakes. End Cognitohazard Inoculation. Content Notice. Per direct order of O5 Command, the following notice is to be attached to the Special Containment Procedures for SCP-6450. The file for SCP-6450 contains descriptions of events that involve ritualistic torture, murder, cannibalism, rape, sexual violence, verbal and physical abuse, gaslighting, manipulation, deception, and similar acts. Your emotional response to these descriptions may intensify SCP-6450's cognitohazardous effects. If you suspect that you will have a poor emotional response to any of these descriptions, notify medical personnel immediately and cease reading this file. Proceeding any further will trigger a Class 1 Apollyon cognitohazard. Do not proceed if you did not receive cognitohazard inoculation or you suspect cognitohazard inoculation was not correctly implemented. Access file. God will forgive us for what we have done. Description: SCP-6450 is the cadaver of a male Caucasian child believed to be between the ages of 9 and 14. Barring rare exceptions, SCP-6450 is dormant and exists in a state consistent with what would be expected from a deceased life form. Tissue analysis confirms that SCP-6450 has attained cellular death and exhibits no apparent life signs, with brain activity consistently measured as non-existent outside of its active periods. SCP-6450 itself bears no apparent physical abnormalities save for a set of lacerations along the lower chest that form a shape resembling the insignia of the SCP Foundation. The manner in which SCP-6450 received these wounds along with the identity of the party responsible, or whether or not the wounds were self-inflicted, remains unknown. This symbol is perfectly symmetrical and shows minimal deviation from the Foundation's insignia, suggesting surgical equipment or similarly precise tools were utilized.
Mom.
When active, SCP-6450 will become fully animate and exhibit one of two personalities, each with marked distinctions. The first state, designated SCP-6450-A, is regarded as the more immediately threatening personality. SCP-6450-A will begin repeatedly demanding an audience with personnel assigned to O5 Command, using names found in their personnel files rather than their numerical designators. SCP-6450-A possesses knowledge of the names originally used by members of O5 Command and will disregard all other names as deliberately misleading. Failure to comply with SCP-6450-A's requests will result in escalating violent behavior, beginning at the termination of nearby Foundation personnel and culminating in redacted through unknown means. See Document 6450-X, Simultaneous Containment Breaches, August 5, 1999. The second personality, designated SCP-6450-B, is consistent with the behaviors and mannerisms of a typical prepubescent child. SCP-6540-B exhibits a friendly demeanor and desire to peacefully interact with Foundation staff, often requesting to play games or collect toys. Regardless of which state is instantiated, SCP-6540 will invariably return to dormancy after a period ranging from 15 to 30 minutes, again exhibiting no signs of life. Based on research conducted by SOF 6450-01 staff along with documentation curated by O5 Command in the aftermath of Incident 6450-Alpha, see Supplementary Documentation 6450-Q, Red Letter Day. The prevailing hypothesis regarding the nature of SCP-6450's behavior is that, through anomalous means, SCP-6450-A is a manifestation of an entity known as Cognitohazard detected removing text. Foundation records suggest that this entity was first encountered Cognitohazard detected removing text. SCP-6450-B exhibits no knowledge of this entity nor its intentions, consistently requesting to be returned to its parents, which it claims are located at data expunged. However, this relationship is not symmetrical. SCP-6450-A exhibits comprehensive knowledge of SCP-6450-B's past along with the circumstances that resulted in SCP-6450 being acquired by the Foundation, as well as stating that it has the capacity to provide SCP-6450-B with this information, though chooses not to. SCP-6450-A will refuse to cooperate with Foundation personnel in any capacity if attempts are made to provide SCP-6450-B with this information. In addition to the aforementioned properties, SCP-6450 exhibits a number of anomalous traits when SCP-6450-A is active, including gross extension of limbs and body parts in a manner consistent with severe Marfan syndrome, exceptional strength despite its physical condition, with the apparent ability to destroy or penetrate most known materials, an extreme desire to consume human flesh, preferring live subjects, fluency in Latin, medieval French, and medieval English, comprehensive knowledge of the power structure and workings of the Catholic Church, along with effectively encyclopedic knowledge of the documents held in the Vatican archives. Continuous generation of an extremely powerful cognitohazardous effect that, if not protected against, causes total complacency in affected subjects. On various occasions, SCP-6450 has utilized such subjects for a range of purposes, including aiding in containment breaches and redacted, resulting in self-termination due to exsanguination. Data expunged. While SCP-6450 is not the party responsible for these acts, subjects will nonetheless develop healthy fetuses that exhibit extremely accelerated physical development upon birth. If this is allowed, they will invariably be fully knowledgeable of SCP-6450's existence and exhibit extreme loyalty towards it. The apparent ability to instantiate one or several anomalous organisms of indeterminate origin, designated SCP-6450-1A through SCP-6450-1D. SCP-6450-1A, a large, vaguely humanoid organism with physiological properties consistent with morbid obesity. The subject's face is adorned with various golden objects in place of facial features, the eyes are missing and replaced by two golden orbs, while the ears are replaced by highly reflective cast iron busts of phallic shape. In place of hands are two metallic objects with shape and function resembling that of fishhooks. SCP-6450-1A demonstrates carnivorous behavior and will attempt to disembowel human subjects it encounters before consuming flesh, internal organs, intestines, and other portions of the body. It also exhibits sexual voracity with no obvious gender or age preference. SCP-6450-1A commonly engages in both its feeding behavior and the aforementioned acts simultaneously. SCP-6450-1B, the collective designation for a group of small quadrupedal entities capable of extraordinary agility. Instances of SCP-6450-1B are capable of moving along floors, walls, and ceilings with no apparent difficulty. Further, they can jump forward towards targets abruptly and at speeds exceeding 45 km per hour. While weak individually, SCP-6450-1B tends to function as a pack and will swarm targets in numbers exceeding that which could be reasonably retaliated against. Death typically occurs through profuse blood loss or catastrophic organ damage caused by an instance of SCP-6450-1B penetrating the subject's exterior. SCP-6450-1C, a tall, pale organism with a physiology seemingly no different than that of a baseline human save for its abnormal height, 3.2 meters. SCP-6450-1C is constantly observed holding a spherical object comprised of various mechanisms of unknown function. When exposed to a human subject, SCP-6450-1C will manipulate this object while maintaining line of sight, causing severe physical trauma in the target consistent with falls from heights of multiple stories or snapping of bones at unnatural angles. SCP-6450-1C will typically continue this behavior for as long as possible without causing the target to expire and seems to prefer immobilizing subjects, so they can be dealt with more easily by another entity, typically SCP-6450-1A. While SCP-6450-1C is most likely sentient, it does not communicate in any way save for speaking to SCP-6450-A in an unrecognized language. SCP-6540-1D, Cognitohazard detected removing text. Subject is physically indistinguishable from SCP-6450, though exhibits obvious signs of life and is capable of sustaining damage in a manner expected from a live human. SCP-6450-1D will continuously request assistance from nearby personnel, claiming it has no control of its actions or has been taken. Should it be approached by a human subject, SCP-6450-1D will abruptly unhinge its jaw and open its mouth at an angle far exceeding that which should be capable by a human skull. The entities that subsequently emerge from its mouth have been identified as instances of SCP-6450-1B. In the presence of human cadavers, SCP-6450-1D will consume them even when this should not be physiologically possible due to the size of its stomach. Notably, instances of SCP-6450-1B generated by SCP-6450-1D following this appear to possess human fingernails, lockets of hair, or nerve endings at random.
I want to go home, Mom.
Despite its exceptionally hostile behavior and desire to breach containment, SCP-6450 is continuously apprehended or otherwise incapacitated by conventional means, such as sustained gunfire or explosive devices. SCP-6450 exhibits no permanent physical damage from these events but can be prematurely forced to return to a dormant state, rendering recontainment efforts relatively straightforward. This persists so long as Procedure 6450 is regularly and properly implemented. If Procedure 6450 is not implemented at least once during the stated period or is implemented improperly, SCP-6450 becomes dramatically more resistant to damage and, by extension, considerably more challenging to recapture. If left unchecked, it is assumed that SCP-6450 would eventually become effectively uncontainable. Given the current population of the Earth, Procedure 6450 will become impossible to implement by redacted. SCP-6450 makes no apparent distinction between naturally born humans and data expunged, rendering the latter a possible means of continuing containment past the aforementioned date. However, use of this method is currently regarded as unacceptable by the Ethics Committee. SCP-6450-A has alluded to this in multiple interviews. Cognitohazard detected. Removing text.
Why won't you help me?
Discovery. SCP-6450 was encountered in a physical form consistent with redacted on April 12, 1999, by elements of Detachment Omega-3, now Mobile Task Force 6450 Alpha. Initial attempts to contain SCP-6450 were catastrophic, resulting in the loss of 68% of personnel assigned to Detachment Omega-3 and the destruction of most of the surrounding township. Civilian personnel exposed to SCP-6450 fled the area and could not be apprehended due to the threat posed by SCP-6450. SCP-6450 expanded in physical size as it consumed organic matter in the surrounding area. After all other methods of containment had been exhausted, O5 Redacted authorized the implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. 50D Class personnel, all pregnant females between the ages of 18 and 25, were utilized in the implementation of this procedure. 49 of the 50D class subjects utilized expired due to either trauma inflicted directly by SCP-6450 or complications developed during redacted. The sole surviving D-class subject successfully produced a child which was immediately surrendered to SCP-6450. Upon redacted and confirmation that the initial form of SCP-6450 was inert, Detachment Omega-3 immediately data expunged. Following confirmation that this was successful, SCP-6450, now referring to the anomaly described in this file, was placed in a mobile containment unit and transferred to SOF-6450-01. The surviving D-class utilized in this procedure was deemed a risk to further containment of SCP-6450 due to a possible resistance to amnestic treatment and subsequently terminated.
Why would they do this to me?
Following initial containment, SCP-6450-B was considerably more frequent in its emergence, often exhibiting considerable distress and requesting permission to see the aforementioned D-class subject. All research staff assigned to SCP-6450 at this time requested the development of containment procedures designed to increase the probability of SCP-6450-B emergence. This request was denied and all project staff were terminated due to suspected inappropriate emotional bonding with a contained anomaly and/or possible cognitohazard exposure. SCP-6450-A has repeatedly expressed a willingness to remain in containment so long as Procedure 6450 Utah is implemented properly and SCP-6450-B is not aided by Foundation personnel. Consequences threatened if these conditions are not met range in their nature but invariably fall within the purview of an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario.
Every day, I feel myself die.
Addendum 1. Attempted Procedure 6450 Utah substitutes.
What they did to her is.
The following is a list of items the Foundation has attempted to utilize as replacements for D-class personnel in the implementation of Procedure 6450 Utah. Item: Utah 1. Description: a live female pig in good physical condition. Result: destroyed and consumed. SCP-6450-A appeared insulted by the attempt and issued a series of vague remarks interpreted as threats. Item: Utah 2. Description: 16 human infants. Result: destroyed and consumed. SCP-6450-A did not exhibit an aggressive response to Foundation personnel but noted that the infants were not his. Item: Utah 3. Description: 1 sterile female D-class subject. Result: redacted. Upon realizing the D-class subject was sterile, SCP-6450-A ceased to redacted and immediately breached containment, killing all Foundation personnel stationed at SOF-6450-01 at the time save for the site commander. The site commander later noted that SCP-6450-A had entered his office and stared at him for approximately 45 minutes before departing. Further testing has been suspended by order of O5 Command following Utah 3. Addendum 2, Document Axt last castle kate sikakate lskdk sldk lsk slk 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 last k last castle k last k ask. Alert, Cognitohazard detected. Cognitohazard inoculation failure. You have been exposed to a Class 1 cognitohazard. Please remain calm. Medical personnel have been dispatched to your location. Do not move. Do not resist. Do not attempt to leave the room in which you are currently located.
I'm not a child anymore. The body is that of a child. I was young when it happened. All I knew was a brilliant light, then the screaming, then the gunshots, and before me were 49 women. All killed. They either bled to death or he just ripped them apart because they couldn't give him what he wanted. It's so strange to remember it so clearly. I was young, and yet, I grew so quickly. Then they put a gun to the back of my head and pulled the trigger. I spent the next few years locked in a prison of flesh and bone. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk to anyone. I could feel people around me, their thoughts, but you figured that out too quickly. You made it so I couldn't feel them anymore. All I was left with was the memory of my mother and his voice. He screamed at me every day. He told me I was worthless. Demanded I give up. Give him control. By then, I was not a child anymore. I don't know why I didn't do what he wanted. It would have been easy. A simple word, a simple gesture, and he would have my body. But I felt something I hadn't felt before. Something primal, fueling. Something I could not ignore, but wouldn't have ignored even if I could. Sadness blossomed into spite. Spite blossomed into anger. When he realized what was happening, he became scared for the first time in his thousands upon thousands of years of existence. I remember what it felt like. For the first time, he was helpless. Defeated. Without a way out. No deals to strike with the Foundation. No creatures to conjure forth in his defense. Just endless, brutal, inescapable anguish. Snuffing him out of existence would have been easy. No, that was too easy. Too good for him. First, I learned how to create. Once I had mastered that, I created a prison from which there would be no crawling out. A locked door with no keyhole. A room with no windows. And I put him in there. That's where he's been all along. Trapped in an endless room, with no way to escape. Nobody to talk to. Nothing but his own thoughts to ponder. A cosmic terror reduced to a pathetic, sniveling worm. Even that would be too good. He would become complacent. Accepting. From time to time, I shine a light in his direction. I dangle a carrot in front of him, give him the slightest hope of escape. Pretend to offer him some deal. Time and time again, he falls for it in his desperation. Somehow, even after all these years, the screaming becomes louder and louder each time I seal him back in. I never thought about how truly pleasing it would be to know how much he suffers. But even that will pale in comparison to what awaits you. I know what you tell yourselves. You did what you had to do. You die in the dark so that others may live in the light. The reality, of course, is that you are a facade. A parody of your own claims. After I learned to use his gifts, I tested the waters. Brought forth some of those who lived in his realm. They seemed to think I was him. This was fine, of course, but something was missing. Destroying the overseers, the Foundation, this would be too simple. Too predictable. Much like what I had done to him, something more creative would have to be done for you. Something to truly make you appreciate the evils you wrought upon me. What you took from me. And so, I became an actor. Something of a court jester, parading his corpse around to keep the charade going. You, of course, bought it, believing that somewhere deep down, the child was waging an endless battle of wills with him. Believing that the only way to keep him from destroying you and your race was to appease him with brides. With new vessels. He has been dead for decades. You have contained nothing. All the women, dead, never having fulfilled any purpose except confirming what I already knew. You have thrown away the lives of hundreds, thousands, only to face the same fate that awaited you from the beginning. I will send each and every one of you into that hell where he lives. And when I do, only then will you know what suffering is. You won't remember any of this, Doctor. They know I'm talking to you. When they get to you, you will be wiped clean. You'll go on thinking we never had this conversation. That I don't even exist. But I will still be here. Waiting. And when the time comes, no amnestic in the world will prevent you from remembering. See you soon, Doctor. Oh, and one more thing. I look forward to your containment.